Okay, I'm here to discuss daily maintenance on the bucket truck that should be performed every day. It should be taken seriously. This is an item that is used for lifting a man into the air to do work. And at the end of the day, you want to be able to go home and see your family. So these are items that we need to pay particular attention to each day. And we'll start with each day when you get to the job, you should have the PTO running, have it running at least 5 or 10 minutes before you get in the air. You want to make sure that the pump's working, make sure you don't have any hydraulic leaks. You want to give the oil a chance to get warmed up and the system flowing. Make sure you got a good location for the unit to set up, good ground, you know, for your outrigger pads and everything, that you got good stable ground for the operation, good level ground to try to work on. But all the fasteners on the VersaLift are marked, and we'll go up and I'll show you. And these are quick and easy inspections. This is called a torque seal, and on each critical bolt or fastener, there'll be a little stripe, a little painted stripe. And if that stripe is not broken, the bolt hasn't moved, it's not compromised. So if the torque seal is broken, then you would obviously want to tighten it back up. But everywhere there's a critical fastener, you'll see them, all the pins, all the knuckle areas, everywhere there's something moving, even inside this clear plastic cover, underneath there's a ring of bolts which hold the turntable. This is the turntable. Hold it down to the pedestal, this being the pedestal. You'll see a ring of bolts, and they have the torque seal on them. Those are very critical bolts. We want to pay attention to those especially. You'll have fasteners to hold the unit to the truck. We want to make sure we get those, and they're on the truck frame. You'll see those. On this unit, there are only 3 grease fittings. You don't want to grease it every day, but all 3 grease fittings are right here in this central area of the turntable. Once a week, just a shot of grease, nothing exorbitant. You don't want to over-grease it. The gearbox would be a once a month grease, just 1 pump, that's all it needs. Want to make sure you've got inspection covers on all the boom areas to where you can keep trash and debris from getting inside the boom. But these are clear plastic, so you have able to be in there and inspect. You can see the hoses, the leveling rods which keep the bucket level, and you should have those. And you got the one at the knuckle, and I'll walk out on the cab guard and show you that one. This covers the hoses that go from the lower controls to the upper controls. We want to make sure those are covered and have the wrap, the sock around the hoses to keep them protected from tree limbs so they don't get pulled on. But they're all critical bolts up here as well, and everything's marked with the torque seal. I would inspect the cylinder rod, which is where the rod comes out of the cylinder, upper and lower boom cylinder rods. Make sure there's no scarring or issues with that, no leaks. Right. In here is the cylinder rod, where the rod comes in and out of the cylinder itself. We want to make sure there's no leaks, no distortion to the rod itself, the chrome. These pins, you can see all these critical fault fasteners have the torque seal here on the other side. I would raise the boom up and check operation of the boom before you ever get in it. That's a must, but you should be able to operate the boom to some degree before you get in it each day. Make sure that everything's functioning properly. And inspect, try to see critical areas like where there's welds, or something's welded to the side of the boom or to the bottom of the boom. Make sure you don't see any cracks. If you see cracks, Colin or someone at Truco needs to be notified so we can inspect it. Fiberglass you can see is smooth. Chips and scratches, that's not a problem. it's cracks, stress cracks is what we would be looking for. Anything that's running across the boom in a long crack, not a chip or a scratch. But we're looking for any welds, any fiberglass structure that may have a crack or stress fracture to it. So we'll go back to the lower controls. This section, Rick, this section here is called the insulator or lower boom insert. This is a fiberglass section, and what this is do is protect the men on the ground from any dielectric properties that may come in contact with the boom from this point up, or up meaning toward the bucket. This would isolate it so that someone, if they touch the truck and you're in a primary, would try to keep electrocuting the man on the ground. So this area really needs to stay clean inside and out, just as well as the upper boom needs to stay clean inside and out as best you can. I wouldn't wash it with real harsh detergents, but I would keep it clean, you know, with good, just regular soap and water.
How do you keep it clean on the inside?
Well, you just take these covers off and squirt you some soap up in there and just rinse it out occasionally. But yeah, but you know, as long as you don't really have, there's no grease fittings up there, so you don't have to worry about, you know, going down the road and grease coming across it. But if it looks clean, you wouldn't worry about it.
Okay.
All right. Here in the center of the turntable, we have all our hoses coming from the lower control going to the upper control and back down through the turret. With these hoses, I would raise the boom up and inspect, just make sure there's no chafing, any kinked hoses, any wear spots. So, and inspect for leaks. We do put some torque seal on these to let you know if something's come loose. You should be able to see that. These areas here, these are used in the case of say the truck quits running for whatever mechanical reason, and you need to get the boom down. These are bleed ports that will help to get the boom down if the truck is not running. These bleed ports should not be touched or operated by any crew. This should be only to the mechanic of leaf and limb or Truco or some VersaLift authorized personnel only. That's very, very important. You have your lower controls here. You want to make sure that everything's functioning, not sticking. And the same thing would be with the upper controls. You want they're in the bucket. Make sure your trigger is working properly, so when you let go of the trigger that the boom functions will not operate and will only operate if the trigger is squeezed. Make sure you don't have any excess play or movement in the controls. Make sure they're good and tight. The same applies with the hoses. Look for chafing, kinks, and look out on the liner on the inside of the bucket. You don't want excessive amounts of sawdust debris. The bucket does dump, so it's not hard to clean out. You would clean it out, make sure you have a good clean area to work in, and that you're not compromising with chainsaws and burning the liner, because that protects you from primary wires in the bucket if you're around high voltage. Hydraulic filter, you have a gauge here. This gauge, as long as you're in the green, the filter is clean. When you start seeing that gauge rise and get into the yellow and the red, then the filter needs to be changed. It's a spin-on filter and can be ordered from Truco, or you can get it from a local parts distributor. But it should be always operating in the green, so you've got a clean filter. And then the hydraulic level is back here. You should have, oil should be visible in this top sight glass at all times. If you do not see it in the second one, do not operate it. You'd need to put oil in it, but you need to make sure it's best to have it in this area right here. And this would be AW22. It'd be the hydraulic oil and weight. It doesn't matter about the manufacturer, but AW stands for anti-wear, and the 22 is the weight. That's the oil. So we're down to the outriggers. The outriggers need to be placed you've got 4 outriggers on this unit. You have your outrigger pads here. They'd be placed under each outrigger. And you want to make sure that when you're setting the unit up, you have the best surface that you can. Make sure the truck is going to be stable. You got good soil, so it's not mushy or sandy, real bad to where you would let the truck tilt. You have bubble levels on the side. Try to keep the truck level this way. You have a bubble level at the back, which keeps it level from driver to passenger side. You want to try to get it to the operating in the white area, which is less than a 5-degree tilt. If you're in that area where you think you're compromised, always remember to work uphill. Do not work downhill. Always work uphill. The outrigger controls are located here at the back. They are marked for front outrigger, rear outrigger, and then you have your pintle hitch.
Maybe the tire pressure.
Okay.
All
right. Yeah, it is. The tire pressure is also stable in the truck, and inside the door panel, I'll show you on the VIN code, it will tell you what the tire pressure needs to be. Not only just for the wear of the tires, but it is critical in the stabilization of the truck when you're setting up. But it's 105 PSI on each tire. So each tire should have 105 PSI in each tire for tire pressure. The outriggers have what's called a outrigger boom interlock. And that means the outriggers have to have positive ground pressure before the boom will operate. So if the outriggers are not touching the ground and pushing the truck, the boom will not operate. Each outrigger has an independent switch, and once the outriggers have made positive ground pressure and you push the truck up a little, then you should be able to go to the back and hit your control to change it from, this is the outrigger position, that is the boom function. And you should hear a click inside the pedestal. When all 4 outriggers have made that and you pull this switch up, you should hear a click and the boom should be ready to function. If the boom still doesn't, you've still got 1 outrigger that's not making positive ground pressure. So, but that keeps so that you cannot operate the boom without the outriggers absolutely being on the ground. You have a micro switch on the lower boom at the rest. And the function of that is once the lower boom comes out of the rest, that micro switch tells the outriggers they cannot move. So once that switch goes up, you can go back and turn that outrigger selector switch back to outriggers, but the outriggers will not work until that switch has come back down with the boom in the cradle. That way the outriggers can't be moved or somebody like a limb fall down and hit the controls and make the boom move. So that is just a safety switch to tell the outriggers, I'm taking over, you can't operate again. Now, the only time that may ever come into play is if you were in soft soil, and let's say you worked over one side of the truck, and that made the outrigger push hard on the ground, and you came back, and you had your upper boom still up at a pretty good angle, and the lower boom came into the rest and pushed the switch down. If one of these outriggers then lost connection with the ground, once that switch comes down, boom will stop. If the guy's still up in the air, he can't move until somebody puts this outrigger down, or whichever outrigger's not making positive pressure. So
if you had some sway in the boom, and it's sort of, let's just say, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's sort of reshuffled and didn't quite that 5%,
yeah,
then that would trigger the outriggers were down no longer have pressure. Would that trigger that?
If let's say you compress the soil and it pushed the outrigger pad down, and then once because you were over here and it pushed the soil down, and the soil didn't come back up with the outrigger, once you came back to the rest and you put the lower boom in and the boom stopped and you couldn't finish racking it up, then what's happened is one of the outriggers on the side that you were operating has broken ground contact. It may still look like it's on the ground, But you could either kick it or go back there to the outrigger valve and start pushing until you find out which one. And then as long as the switch is still up in the boom position at the back, then the outriggers will quit once that outrigger has made pressure again.